Hi, this is Maria from the Nature Health Program. The proof for the healing power of unadulterated nature is in the results. I am sure you would agree. In today's segment, I have the pleasure of introducing to you my dear clients Cheryl and Dan, who, as a result of following the Nature Health Program, can be with us today. Here is Cheryl and Dan to explain their experiences, which led to such an amazing results, courtesy of our wonderful healer called Nature. Here is Cheryl and Dan.
Well, I first met Maria in Calgary in September 2015. It was a chance meeting in a place that I normally would never go. It was Princess Island Park in Calgary. I was babysitting for our daughter and her husband who were doing a wedding, and my daughter was still nursing. So I had a long, long day with her, and it was getting to the end of the day, and I was so tired I just wanted to go sit in the sun. And I saw on the hill two picnic benches. One of them had this lady sitting on it, and the other was empty, but the empty one was in the shade, and I wanted the sun. So I said, okay, fine, I'll just go sit down with this lady, and I had a headache, it didn't feel like it, and I went and sat with my little stroller and a crying baby, and sat down and ate something ridiculous in front of her, and Maria just started talking to me about the baby and asking about nursing and saying that's the best, and I was like very intrigued because I was like, what? Usually people don't say things like that. And our conversation continued, and I said, what do you do? And Maria said, I've been in nutrition and healing with nature for 30 years. And I was like, you have? And I told the story of Dan's bone infection, and Maria said, I can help you. And I told about feeling desperate and that we were looking for the next step because nothing was working, and it had been almost 5 years of struggling with this infection. So as Maria and I, the sun was going down and we started walking, and I started explaining a few details that in the spring an infectious diseases specialist had said there's nothing else that we can do for Dan. And I said, we are looking for solutions, and this summer we heard about bentonite clay, and we used that to draw the infection out, and Dan's been using that, had been using it about 30 to 40 days, and it did draw the infection out. But what it also did was help it come to light that there was a bigger issue than just a little bone infection, and that Dan was in serious trouble. I explained just a few things that I had bought, but I didn't know what to do with it, that were from the health food store or anyway, Maria said, oh, that's great. And she said, you are on the right track. And I said, you are an answer to my prayers, because we've been praying for the next solution.
So my wife and I were going to go to Hawaii, and we thought that was a great idea, and it was. And then I put my sandals on, and I was wondering why is it was wintertime, it was January, and I had my skates on because we had a skating rink we were skating on, and my one foot felt so tight, and I thought, why is that? However, didn't pay any attention to it, but as we were getting ready to go to Hawaii, I put my sandals on, and then I realized that I had this sore on my foot. And so I thought, that's weird. Where did that? And it was called a Brody's abscess. It was right between my ankle bone and my heel. And there was just this big bump there, and the strap of my sandal went right over it, and it really caused discomfort through part of our holidays. And we thought, okay, we got to deal with this when we get home. So I went to my doctor, and she sent me to a specialist. Long story short, we had I think a very excellent doctor who took the Brody's abscess off, But the way we can figure is, and what the surgeon said as well, is what happened was she nicked an encapsulated infection that was in my heel, and because of the recent surgery, the infection was able to surface through the very surgery that she had made. And so after the surgery, things were healing up very nicely and closing up nicely, and then all of a sudden this oozing started coming up through the incision. And my surgeon saw that, and she thought, And you need to understand that while I'm after the surgery, of course, I was put on a very heavy dose of antibiotics to make sure that the infection or that there would be no infection. And so I was on these antibiotics, and this oozing is not stopping. So I went back again to my surgeon saying, this is still happening, and what do we do about it? And she said, okay, we need to go in there again and make sure that we get all the infection out of your bone. And so then I had my second surgery, and long story short is it even called for a third surgery that we did, and then she thought for sure she had all the infectious area cleaned out of my bone. And so every time I'm having my surgery, I'm given these antibiotics, and I'm also carrying around a PICC. I have a PICC line in me with antibiotics which are being pumped into me every day, and this goes on for several months. I think 3 months. And at the end of the day, nothing was happening. And after the third surgery, she said, "You know what? I'm going to hand you over to an infectious disease doctor." And so then I was handed over to him, and then under his guidance, he gave me some stronger antibiotics, which I took. And again, I was on these for a long time, and nothing seemed to happen. And so it was really disheartening, actually, because after taking all these antibiotics, we thought, okay, well, that should kill the problem, but it wasn't. And it would kind of happen like this. It would the wound would kind of seal over, and then we thought, okay, great. But then after about 3 or 4 days, pressure would build up, and then it would just blow the top. It's like a little volcano. It would just pop open, and then it would just kind of soak into my Band-Aid, and then the pressure would be gone, and we'd feel, I feel so much better. And then 3-4 days, like you'd almost set your watch to it. It would happen that often, and then it would just keep occurring. And like Cheryl was saying, we got to the point where, like, okay, what do we do? We were just already praying, okay, we need something else here to do, because we're obviously not getting anywhere the way we're going. So then it came to the point where, like Cheryl said, the doctor finally said, "You know what? There's nothing we can do for you. Honestly, you might as well quit taking your antibiotics, because they're obviously not doing any good." So I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll quit taking my antibiotics. And then I thought, wow, that's it. And I've been told before by several physicians that sometimes people just live with this. And I thought, wow, that's terrible that people have to just live with this. And so Cheryl and I did. We just kind of, okay, well, we just put up with it. And months later, we finally came to a point where, okay, this, I guess, you know what, it kind of happened. It was one weekend, it kind of was more dramatic than other times. We were on a retreat with several other people, and that night I went to bed and I took my sock off, and my sock was literally it had a large area on the sock that was literally wet with an ooze and with blood. And that had never happened before. And I thought, whoa, what's happening here? There's a change here. And from that point on, we said, okay, we got to do something. If there's nothing else out there that we can do to follow instructions with, then let's see what we can do for ourselves. Okay, so what I've said is that we got to the point where we really got to where we needed to do something. And I had a lady in my office, and she was talking about something. They had dug a piling for something they needed, and they hit an artesian spring, and that came through this pipe. Well, the pipe was supposed to be an anchor for a bridge, not an artesian wellhead. So they dumped bentonite down this wellhead, or down this pipe. And she said, just flippantly, she said, and apparently it has some healing powers or healing compounds to it as well. And I went, healing compounds? And so I very quickly looked it up on the internet. And it was interesting because Cheryl had almost at exactly the same time had been introduced to that idea as well. So we kind of went down this trail a little bit, and the reason we started doing things on our own was because basically the physicians I had been seeing really said, Dan, there's nothing more we can do. And in fact, we need to keep an eye on it, because if it gets too bad, your whole foot gets infected, and then it's obvious that they have to remove the infected part, which is amputation. So that is also something that they told me that I was like, wow, I'm not okay with that. And I like walking on both my feet. So what can we do to help fix that? And so after 3 years of extensive antibiotic doses, 3 surgeries, no, after 4 years of this, 3 surgeries, all this antibiotic, and some of it was excessively stronger than others, so just a pile of that stuff. Nothing was working, and now we're into, okay, what can we do on our own to fix this? And really, honestly, not very many people are put into this position where they got to figure this out, and it can actually become a life-threatening thing. So what we did is we got this bentonite clay. It was green clay, as a matter of fact, and I started putting it on the infected areas of my foot, just my foot. And I did this for about, probably 3 to 4 weeks, and then stuff hit the fan. We were on a weekend away, and I felt tender behind my ears. And we'd kind of been dabbling with essential oils too, a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe I put too much of the oils behind my ear. But we got home that weekend, and all of a sudden, the wheels completely fell off the wagon. And my ears completely puffed up to be about twice the size. They were standing straight out. I remember going into my office the one day, and my colleagues never said anything, but they told me later that they were like just looking at me thinking, what happened to you? And of course I had to keep going to work. I thought we're going to work through this somehow. And I finally, my ears got so big and there was fluid coming out of my ears. So I think what we feel is what happened was, and it was interesting because 3 weeks after I started using the clay on my foot, the surface of my foot, the wound that had been discharging this fluid for the last 4 years completely sealed over. And may I say, it healed over. It didn't just scab over, it completely healed over. And that was really interesting for us. Well, when we saw that had happened, we went like, wow, that's cool. That's awesome. But then I am completely messed. My ears are literally, I had a shower and I could see the fluid running down the inside of my ears and it would drip onto my shoulder. This wasn't extensive. It didn't just keep dripping, but it was happening. And it was that way for several days, and my ears swelled up, and my body was completely covered in hives. Like, it was the worst I've ever had. I do have allergies. An allergy, I would say, with hay fever. I wasn't able to do farming because I would get into grain dust and my body would react, and I would get hives all over the place. But this is like hives on steroids, I tell you. It was brutal. My whole body was covered, front and back, with these hives, to the point where I was so itchy, I didn't know what to do with myself. And one night I woke up in desperation, and I found a bottle of calamine lotion, dumped it into a cereal bowl, and with a sponge, or was it even with my hand or a cloth, I just lathered myself, my whole chest, with this stuff, because my chest was the worst as far as the itch was concerned. And then I did it again, let it dry, and then I did it the third time. So in the morning I woke up feeling like I'm a lizard, because I got this coat of armor of calamine lotion on my body. However, as awkward as that felt, it was still a relief from the itch that I had. So I got to go see a doctor. This is crazy. So what I did is I went to, my family doctor was not around, so I went to a very good friend of mine who was a physician. I love this guy. He's awesome. And I went to him, and he had one look at me, and he said, "Oh, Dan, you're in trouble." And so I was there for probably, it took up an hour or more of his time. And what he did, I thought was, I really commend him for it. He really tried hard to see if he could get to the bottom of this. And because it was a skin reaction, he also then confided in some of his colleagues at the office as well as in Calgary, made several calls. He just left my room for several minutes, made some calls, and they had a little conference call to see, what are we going to do with this guy? He's really messed. And so they gave me several medications in order to deal with the skin issue. But deep down inside, we're thinking, okay, my heel is now blocked off. I don't know if we have fixed the infection. I bet you what's happened is now the infection is finding other ways to get out of my body. And really, to this day, that's what we think happened. And my whole system went crazy. And that's when, about then, is where Cheryl met Maria. And then things took a whole new shift. And we're so thankful to God that we were able to meet her and kind of give us hope. Like, you can actually live. You're going to work. It's going to work. And you're going to make it. Traveled by what she sees. She's seen worse. So that definitely gave, I remember going home that day and going, okay, let's give this lady a shot, because our efforts were pretty much done. So, and it was so not forceful. I remember her just saying, okay, Dan, look at me. You need to do this. And you need to do everything I ask you. And in my mind, I'm going, oh, sure, no problem. How bad can that be? Well, it wasn't bad at all. Honestly, kind of. But some of the things I did were like, seriously? This works? And I have to drink this stuff? But obviously it didn't kill me, even though I thought at the time, oh, this is just the worst. But it wasn't. Okay, it totally wasn't. When you have a purpose, when you have a plan, when you know that your back's up against the wall, you will do anything. And when you're consuming everything natural that God has made, like everything, there was nothing she ever asked us to do that wasn't completely, legitimately, 100% natural. Okay? There was nothing that man chucked into it to add to make it better. No, none of that stuff. It was completely natural. And so, even though some of it was hard to stomach, we still did it, and here we are, thanking the Lord. And you also need to know that when we first sat down, she said, okay, Dan, it's going to be 8 months. And I thought to myself, pretty lady, I don't have 8 months. But it's amazing what you'll do when you have to do it. Your time is not your time. It's in. I mean, our time is never our time. We're here on this earth for such a brief moment, and time is nothing. And looking back now, 8 months I thought would be so long, but it just chugged by, and very quickly that time was up, and it was almost to the week of what Maria said it was going to be, until Cheryl and I looked at each other and I was like, oh, thank you, God, for bringing us through this time. I mean, it wasn't completely done in 8 months. There was still healing going on, but the infection was gone. There was just skin surface stuff that had to be done, and we're ever so grateful.
I'd like to interject on it wasn't that hard. Well, from my perspective.
Oh yeah, well it was. It was.
From my perspective, Maria said, juice, everything green, foods that are dark, beets and kale and
Radish. Black radish.
So every week we take this little notebook and write notes of what to take. So for me, we went through 3 juicers. The first one I borrowed for a few days, and every day I had a big silver bowl, and I would get organic vegetables and juice it. So every day Dan drank juice. And there are other things that in Maria's protocol, which I'm sure she's telling you all about, that we did. We did every single thing she said. From my perspective, gathering the vegetables, washing the vegetables, juicing it, it did take a lot of my time, a lot of time. But when you see results of somebody who is told there's nothing else that we can do for you, why ever in the world would you not do that if you're going to heal your body and be more vibrant and better than you ever have been for 5 years? Yes, it can be a little costly to buy organic. We didn't eat pesticides, no processed foods. I learned to be an amazing cook of cooking bone broth soups and throwing in turmeric and onions, and learned that different kinds of onions have different vitamins, and different kinds of colors of beets have different properties. Radishes. I cooked incredibly. I learned how to make things that I never really cooked before, and it was all chop, 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 onions, fresh. And we actually thought, man, what good food that we're eating. It was so great, and it was Maria's inspiration, and also our feeling of desperation that if we do not take seriously everything that she said, that maybe Dan wouldn't be here. And there was one point in November where Dan had edema really bad. That's a swelling of, actually it went in both feet where they looked like elephant stumps. And some folks from the medical community that we knew were panicking and saying, get him to the hospital right now. And we had an experience where we actually did go to emergency because of urging from people, and had other doctors again look at it again and had 3 different opinions right there. And so we just kind of felt panicked again. And Maria said, stop listening. Just stop listening and keep following what we're doing, because it's going to work. And it did. We felt like we did our due diligence to all the possibilities. But seriously, we have no idea what would have happened to Dan if we had never met. Maria and her experience from years and years of healing with nature saved Dan's life.
I am so thankful for Cheryl and for Maria. Cheryl, honestly, she has a job. It wasn't a full-time job, but she still had a job. And she was full out preparing and juicing and boiling up stuff for me consistently for almost the entire, like probably for 5 months, 6 months. And that was a horrendous load on her. But obviously, her love for me goes very practical, not just emotionally. And so I am so thankful for what Cheryl's done for me. Honestly, between her and Maria and God, this video would not be happening. And so I am just so very, very thankful.
Why would anyone not follow Maria's protocol? Unadulterated nature. It works. It worked for Dan. Her whole protocol has flaxseed oil and herbs and teas and so many things. It's like one thing doesn't do it. It was a total, complete, many things together is what healed Dan, and we're thankful.
I kind of partway through this whole thing, I'm thinking, okay, before I was taking antibiotics and they weren't working, and now I'm taking all this other stuff, and I realized everything I'm taking into my body now, none of it is bad for me. None of it.
Nothing chemical.
No, and maybe some of it isn't working as much as other things, but it's all good. It's all good. So what if my body's kicking out some stuff it doesn't need or whatever, but none of it is harming me. And for that, we're really grateful. I mean, that really is a cool thing when you're thinking about it. That this is not going to wreck my body. It's going to help it. Okay, so this whole thing, this whole healing your body with natural plants and vegetation. And you know what? There's probably so much out there that we haven't even discovered yet that nature can give us and how it can heal us. But throughout the whole process, remember when I told you that it would take 8 months? Well, I'm not sure about you, but whenever you're working hard at getting something done, even a project, a renovation, whatever it is, you get to a certain point and it's like, okay, this sucks. This is really taking longer than I wanted it to. I don't see progress, and people are coming over and saying, oh, you're only here yet? I don't see anything happening. Well, you know what? It was the same way with us. I can remember shortly after Cheryl and I have had several cries together where we just embraced each other, and this grown man cried, and you get to the point where really frustrated and like, how long is this going to take? And okay, so you need to know that when you give the body a chance to get better, it's going to take a while, but the body wants to do that. It wants to heal itself. If you give it what it needs, and nature has so much that it needs, that it takes a while for it all to start kicking out the garbage and start rebuilding everything up again. And what I want to encourage people with is this, that throughout our journey the last 8 months, it has been really discouraging sometimes. And I remember being in front of the fridge and I just kind of lost it. And Cheryl was there and we just embraced, and I cried together with her. And knowing that Maria said it's going to take time, I remember one night, okay, what I want to tell you is that the healing, it doesn't go like a slope. It kind of goes in jumps. At least it did for me, okay? And that's what I can tell you, is this is what happened to me. One of my encouraging moments was, I'm having a perfectly good sleep, except I'm getting up a lot because I need to go to the washroom, because I'm taking a lot of fluids in. And as soon as I kind of woke up laying on the bed, before I left the bed, I just sensed there was something different happening here. And I got to the washroom with the light on, and I noticed some significant change in my feet. Because you need to know that my feet were so swollen, and Cheryl mentioned about that you could not see my ankles. There was no wrinkles in my feet. When I lifted my foot up, there was just one wrinkle, nothing else. My toes were not swollen, but the swelling came right to the behind where my toes began, and it's just like this fat glob there. And I'm sitting there in the washroom, and I'm looking at my feet, and I'm not kidding you, a third of the swelling had suddenly disappeared. And I'm going, sweet! Something's happening here. Something is moving out of my system. And I finally lost some of the fluid that my legs had. Another time was when, you need to understand too that my arms, it's just weird, but my legs were affected just to above my knees, and swollen and very itchy, and my arms too, for some reason, from my big knuckles here all the way to my shoulder actually. And it was taking a long time for swelling to go down there as well. And because of following the protocol that Maria had, also one night, or the next morning, I unwrapped my arms, and I was like, wow, there's a change here. And the pain didn't feel so tight. But before this, okay, even before my toes, with all the infection leaving my body, my lymphs were crazy. They were like I had big eggs here behind my ears, and also my groin, my lymph was incredibly swollen. And it was like an extra large egg cut in half and just stuck onto your skin. And they were really, really inflamed. And there was a moment too when suddenly I saw, wait a minute, this has really gone down here, Cheryl. Look. And I would show her the changes there. And then it was the same way with my groin. The one side was always really large, and then the other side, halfway through, it also began to inflame. And so there was a point too when those went significantly dropped again too. But then it took, the rest of the time, it was a slow thing where slowly it disappeared. And these, they're completely gone now. And so I just want to encourage you that when you do something like this, it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to get, let's just forget it, chuck the towel in and go, I'm done with this. But no, I think there's moments that God kind of goes, come on, hang in there. And then Maria would go, yes. And every time we visited her, sometimes the protocol would change because there was progress. Okay, we're going to change this and we're going to do something different now. Just hang in there, because it takes, for one, it didn't get that way overnight, so why do we think it's just going to disappear overnight? Mm-hmm. It took a long time for me to get to the point, and who knows what, even my diet wasn't great before all of this, okay? I love sugar. Let's just put it straight and simple. I love sugar.
And hot dogs.
Yeah, donuts, yay! And so, that was my life before, okay? However, Cheryl had changed my life, my eating pattern somewhat after what her situation was. But still, I loved all this stuff. So, and then the 4 or 5 years with all this stuff happening, my body was kind of messed up. And so I have to allow, okay, I should have said, when Maria said 8 months, I should have said, oh, really? It's only going to take 8 months? Because your body needs time. It needs time to just embetter itself. And very thankful that I gave it the time. Even though your body doesn't really, you don't give your body any time. Your body will demand it. We think we have control of our body. Just so you know, newsflash, we don't, okay? When you get to a certain point, your body will just say, we're done with whatever you're doing to your body, we're shutting down. I know it doesn't suit you, but that's just what's going to happen. And that's what was happening to me. And so all this stuff, Cheryl helping me, Maria helping us, and just intake of unadulterated, wonderful food is why we're having this encouraging time. And I hope you guys are encouraged, okay? I hope you take away from here that, you know what, don't lose hope. Take courage. Listen to someone. Humble yourself. Get rid of some other ideas that you've had about stuff that might work and still will. Just open yourself up to the thought that, hey, let's just give this a shot. How bad can it be?
Unadulterated nature works.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Maria, we are so thankful that what you did for Dan, because we'd like to introduce our little family here. This was just taken a couple months ago, and the picture just wouldn't be the same if Dan wasn't in it. And our kids were so concerned for their dad, and we've got 5 little grandchildren, and it wouldn't have been nearly as much fun without Grandpa.
And I'm
Thank you.
so pleased that my knowledge in unadulterated nature could help you out. And I'm so pleased also that I have met you and I had the opportunity to be with you for the period of time, and I will always be your friend.
That
Thank
is
you.
true.
And our kids really, really appreciate you too. Thank you.
Yay!